All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR Black Box Online Radio. During the last upload that I did, there was a little interference with the sound, so tried something a little different today. Hopefully, that problem will be completely solved. And anyway, thank you for tuning in once again. Why don't we get started? I did one upload on the case of Maura Murray, of course, the girl who disappeared from her after crashing her car in 2004 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. And I decided, instead of doing like something more general like I did in the last upload, I would do something that was more in line of talking about the single greatest clue in the case. And the first thing I need to do is say that I followed this case kind of in depthly about 2.5 years ago. And I'm not familiar with all the information that's gone around yet. I started following some other cases and projects and such. I mean, 2.5 years, if you can imagine. If there is any sort of blog that's gone, or any sort of writer who has put out some additional information, maybe I'm not aware of the most recent developments trying to say. And I have to say that because the reason why I couldn't keep following everything was because the information was constantly changing. It was just like everybody had to just go back and say that, well, okay, excuse me, I didn't get these details exactly right. And we heard it, all across YouTube. We heard it in the printed materials. We heard it on the blogosphere. We heard it in newspaper articles about the case. And people are just changing all the details, and it's hard to really find, a consistent pattern here. But I would like to say that the single biggest clue that I felt that helped sort of formulate any theory was the alcohol. Now, it's my understanding, at least it was, in 2.5 years ago, that when they recovered the alcohol from Maura's car, she had a 6-pack of wine coolers, a box of Franzia wine, and that was all they were able to recover. There was a receipt in there that showed she had spent the $40 at the liquor store, and on the receipt it mentioned a bottle of Kahlua. There had been this long discussion going on that she also had a bottle of vodka, that she also had a bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream. And I was just looking at a blog before recording this about, someone was kind of explaining that they're just conflicting stories about that, and I believe that's mentioned in numerous places. And is that exactly too important? Well, let's get to it. Let's just sort of get to the heart of the matter. A lot of people were saying that this is too much alcohol for one person. Even what I just said, bottle of Kahlua, box of Franzia wine, 6-pack of wine coolers. I do not believe they were Seagram's wine coolers. I believe they were actually a different brand name. I don't know why the name Seagram's is thrown around so frequently. But look, is this too much alcohol for one person? I remember everyone was saying that, and they're trying to say that Maura was going to meet somebody. They're trying to say that there was a tandem driver going along, and I just have to say no. I think this is exactly the amount of alcohol that a person would want if they were trying to get away from civilization for a few days. I mean, I'm just giving a personal response. I mean, I think it's more than what one person would drink, but the thing is, you're going to want to have too much, not too little. Anyone who's hosted a college party would know that, right? I mean, so it really just sort of feels like this is a one-person thing. I don't think there's anything to suggest that this is what somebody would use if they were going to meet somebody. And if you're going to meet someone, you don't leave it behind. You know what I mean? It's like, that also really has to sort of give us the impression that the car crash was not planned, like some people have suggested, that, it was a literal, genuine accident. It wasn't like crash the car and then let's wait for somebody to come pick me up, the tandem driver thing, or going to meet somebody. No, absolutely not. I mean, and can't really get into too much of the specifics of why, because, it'll just end up being this massive, 30-minute spiel, but it's pretty much just sort of like she had total darkness surrounding her. Why would you crash the car in like such a well-lit part of town, but that's not really important. Why is the alcohol such a big thing? Because that really gives the suggestion that she was going somewhere and she wasn't really planning to commit suicide or meet anyone. That means that there's some sort of accident that's going on. Picture the scenario. Somebody crashes their car, and then, they sort of make up a story about calling AAA, even though that's not possible. They had no reception. They're starting to panic. They don't know what to do. Then, it's just sort of like, if there's wine in a Diet Coke bottle, you pour it out. You go to the emergency kit in the trunk of the car. You just shove a rag in the tailpipe because you're not thinking properly. You grab the bottle of Kahlua and you hightail it out of there. And that pretty much just leads us to know that that really goes down one of two possibilities by now. And I say two because if there has been no resurfacing of Maura at this time, I really have to lean more to the sort of Fred Murray thing and the sort of Murray family thing, that Maura is probably no longer alive. I don't think she's living somewhere under a different name or something like that. And what I really just would say with that is, that's just somebody who grabs this bottle of Kahlua, tries to just get it away as far as possible. The two possibilities are either she went into the forest and, drank herself to death, or she was just, trying to hightail it out of there, hitched a ride, and ran into conflict with somebody. And as I said in the first upload, it does not have to be an opportunistic serial killer. It can just be any altercation with someone that got out of control. I mean, that's all it could be. It's just sort of like... So right now, I'm sort of resting with either one of those two possibilities, but we have to remember they really scoured the area, the general radius around the crash site, and they found absolutely no trace of her remains. So that leads me to believe that she was definitely in somebody's car. The search dogs also lost her scent 100 yards from where the car crash was, so that tells me she got in somebody else's car. Either she just sort of wandered the wilderness and was that night, or that person, did something to her. We may never know. This really is one of the cases that we may never get a definite answer to, and it is heartbreaking. And, people are talking about, unless they somehow discover a backpack, or they have some form of DNA evidence that would somehow be preserved after this time, or skeletal remains, of course, as gruesome as that would sound. Those might be the only ways that we will actually obtain, some sort of closure to the case. But I really have to say that thing with the alcohol is one of the largest things that has always, been sort of a center point for me. And really, I really just have this picture of a girl, who made up a story to get away from college for a week, going to the mountains that she loved, and, she's just gonna, stay in a hotel there and just sort of, they use the expression clear her head, but I don't really like that expression. It's more just get away from it all. Or just, do sort of your own personal retreat, if you will. She's had a lot of bad, stressful things, and she crashed her car along the way, It's just sort of like a breaking point. Not to mention the other car crash, but it's just it's out of control. She just sort of hit a breaking point, and then it's just grab that one bottle of Kahlua and then just hightail it out of there. And it's possible, but it's I also have to say it once again. People have been constantly revising the details based on, the different reports, and again, I really followed it 2.5 years ago. I'm not familiar with all the new developments. So if I've really made any kind of major inaccuracies, please feel free to correct me in the comments section. In this case, more than any single other one I found, they're just every week, when I was involved with this, they were just sort of changing the major details. And it's very difficult to formulate any sort of consistent theory when that happens. But I would really love to hear some more about what other people think. And also, One thing that I noticed was never really discussed too much was you never just had, four people sitting at a table arguing the likelihood of the different scenarios. Maybe someone's done it recently, but I would just like someone needs to talk about the likelihood of murder, someone needs to talk about the likelihood of suicide, likelihood of accidental death, and the likelihood of that Maura is still alive. That's the fourth one. But, I'm just kind of curious what anyone else would think. If you have anything to say at all, please throw a comment in the section below and feel free to contribute to the discussion in any way. Absolutely welcome, and hopefully we can just expand this a little more. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.